The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone and welcome to part 2 of the Things You Need to Know About Playpak webinar series. So this one is all about, it's all about sitting pretty, so helping to achieve independent sitting and how you can do that by using the various components that are available with Playpak. So it's Nick Mant who joined us for the first one, part 1. Nick is a physiotherapist and he's also founder of Flying Start Children's Therapy, which is in Yorkshire in the UK here. And my name is Claire Greer. I work for Firefly and I'm just going to be moderating this. So I'm going to help Nick. I'm going to field your questions throughout. And if there's anything that you'd like to ask, please feel free to type it into the questions panel there that you see on your screen. So the aims of today's webinar are firstly to explain how you can transition from the early positions, which we discussed in the first part of the series, onto sitting positions. Secondly, we're going to outline how you can use Playpak in early sitting and how you can use it to achieve more advanced sitting positions as well. Then we're going to discuss the challenges that some children face with sitting, and we're going to provide you with techniques to assist your child to transfer from lying to sitting. And then lastly, we're going to answer as many of your questions as we can. So we'll do that in sections. There's sort of 2 key sections to this, and we'll do questions at the end of the first and at the end of the second. So as I say, please do have a think about them as you go through and feel free to type them into the panel. If there's something that you think of after this webinar, or if you're listening to a recording, you'll get a little prompt with my email address on it after the webinar, and you can just email me and I'll make sure that you get an answer to your question. Okay, so Nick, if you would like to start then, that's us with early sitting.
Hello everybody. So today we're going to go over, as Claire said, go over some early sitting positions, and we'll start with early sitting and move on to more advanced sitting later on. So early sitting can start long before your child is actually ready to sit. So think of other mainstream products which support a child in sitting that allow you to play face to face. The Playpak can do exactly that, and as we say, it helps you build your child's tummy and back muscles. They can begin to participate in more social activities with siblings, because obviously siblings would like to sit with each other and start to play with more toys. It can develop the child's body and spatial awareness, because they're not just laid facing the world, not just above them, it's to their sides as well. It can help them control their arm and leg movements independently of each other, because they can easily reach down towards their knees, similar to how we showed in the previous webinar where we were helping children reach their knees and their feet with their hands laid on their back. It's the same sort of position, but more against gravity, so gravity actually helps them reach down towards their hand and helps them reach down towards their knees and their feet. It also improves communication, because they can look at family and look around. So moving on to the next slide, Claire. The thing about sitting is that it is a much more challenging position than the previous laying positions that we showed in the previous webinar. So because it's difficult, you might want to work within your child's ability and seek guidance from the therapist. However, generally speaking, if a child is well supported, they won't adopt any of the poor postures that they can show through increased or decreased tone. The thing to note is that although the Playpak is very supportive and allows you to do various different sitting activities, it does not replace the supportive seating that would be provided by your occupational therapist if you have one. So other difficulties would be that the children with low tone slouch forward and almost form too much of a C shape with their back, and they don't generate the strength to sit themselves up, so they would obviously need a lot more support. And children with high tone who throw themselves backwards, when they're challenged, if you put them in sitting and they're challenged, they'll then throw themselves backwards and almost banana in a backwards shape, which would then lift their pelvis off the floor and throw themselves backwards. So again, they would need enough support so that they didn't feel so their body didn't send them off into this tonal pattern. It's important to note, though, that if a child does that and if they throw themselves backwards, it's not a choice to go into that position due to comfort or discomfort of the actual sitting. It's just that their body reacts that way poorly, and it's not a chosen thing to do. So yeah, next slide, Claire. Cool. So for really early sitting, you can almost recline baby so that it's less demanding for them, and you can create. So when we were talking about back lying on the previous webinar, we made a nest so that the shoulders and the hips were forwards, and it made the coming away from the surface a lot easier. You can do a very similar thing in sitting. So on the top picture there, you can see there's a roll at the bottom horseshoe, which almost supports the bottom and the pelvis in a forwards position, so that it then we call it opens up the pelvis a bit, so it puts them in a reclined sitting position, but then their shoulders are still nicely supported, as you can see in the bottom picture, which helps them get that head control to then look forwards to you and left right to toys and things. Although we'll move on to more advanced sitting, but that's not to say that you can't, even early on, because of the straps that you can get with Playpak, you can still remove the bottom horseshoe, slide the bottom back into a more natural sitting position, unlike some mainstream seating supports, which to keep the child sat in them, they tilt the pelvis too far backwards, so that then instead of it being a comfortable sitting position, they're almost stuck in this really sort of folded up position. Whereas in the Playpak, with the bum slid right back, it's a natural sitting position, and you can provide the support with straps as opposed to just making them stuck by shoving their bottom right back in a support. Yeah, that's fine. Oh, you're way ahead of me. No, I wanted it. It was just I was expecting to say go. So to support baby in the sitting position, we can use either one or two straps. So the girl pictured here is only a littly, so she just needed the one strap in front of the pelvis. But if she was to be a little bit bigger, I would remove the roll at the back of the horseshoe, slide her bottom back, use one strap over the pelvis, and then probably get another strap to then help keep her body up and in a more sitting position as opposed to really flexed forwards. Saying that, if you at times you would want to remove that top strap so that she can actually flex forwards and reach for the floor. So yeah, next slide. So what we're really aiming for in the early sitting is to develop the core stability and the head control so that they can actually comfortably slide the bottom back to a more upright sitting posture, because obviously being reclined isn't the functional, playful sitting that we would want and aim for. So it's just to slowly progress them back so that they're more upright, more head control, arms are coming forwards, and so that they're actually able to use their hands with toys at their legs. So yeah, encourage hands to come forward. This will help baby prop trunk. So the hands on the knees and playing with the feet. So yeah, so the order that we learn sitting is initially, obviously, when children learn how to sit, we're trying to get them to put their hands forward so that they're supporting their own trunk up. The natural development of sitting is then to learn putting the hands to the side, learning saving reaction to the side, and then at the back. So the first bit, the real key bit to learning sitting is getting those hands forward, so it teaches baby that, yeah, look, these are my hands, I can put them down, I can use them when I'm in this position, and then I can progress and learn to put them in other places, reach for toys, move them from left to right, get things that I want to get that are out of reach. Yeah. So that was a whistle-stop tour of early sitting. But have we got any questions?
I just wanted to say as well, if you didn't catch part one of next webinar, and if you're thinking I would have quite liked to have seen that, there is a recording available on the Firefly Friends website. So if you were to go to fireflyfriends.com and then into the therapist section, there is an education section within that has everything, that has all the recordings in there. So it links you to the videos so you can watch them back. And this one will be on there as well. And as well as that, Nick has written blog posts on these same topics too. So they're currently on the community section of fireflyfriends.com, which has just been newly launched. So if you wanted to even go and have a look at that, it's a brilliant resource and forum for all things special needs. And as I say, Nick's blog posts are on there too. You'll see them there if you were to click in. So at the moment there are no questions, Nick, so you've just explained yourself really well. So
Let's hope that's why.
we can continue on, and if anything comes up, I'll interrupt you and we can.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so on to advanced sitting.
Okay, so early sitting is what I refer to as with the legs in a looped sitting position, which I'll talk about a little bit more about later, but with baby coming forwards and placing the hands to the floor. I think more of the advanced sitting postures as those which, when we're starting to move out of that position, we're going side to side. So to move on to these positions, you really do need to have head control and trunk control. And the beautiful thing about the Playpak is that it's so versatile with how much support that you can give that you can start off with those early positions and then transition a little bit more so that you can develop that just forward-facing sitting by taking out the top horseshoe, then maybe the top strap, then the bottom strap, so that they're still sitting forwards in that early posture, but gaining less and less support. And once they're at that level, then you can really start to have fun and mess around with things. So we've overcome a lot of the early difficulties, the difficulty in actually sitting by the time we're reaching these advanced sitting postures. So yeah, if we go on to the next slide. So this is what I mean about the versatility, in that if you look at the top slide, we've taken away the horseshoes, or the top horseshoe, and we've just got that strap there to make sure that we're kept snug in place. The legs are facing forwards, and we're actually, you can't see in the picture, but we're actually playing with beads to the left and right, and we're throwing them around a little bit. And then the bottom picture, we're actually using one of the rolls to support the pelvis, because this little chap, he still can't quite sit by himself. He needs just that little bit of support around his pelvis. So I've still got that in with the roll, but then I'm actually using the horseshoes to keep the legs in a more straight position. So if we go on to the next slide, that's when we'll talk about loop sitting.
Okay.
She says, confidently. There we go. So we're using the horseshoe to maintain this long leg sitting posture, which is a really nice, more advanced sitting posture than the really early ones. So in early sitting, we do looped sitting. So the legs are out to the side, they're rotated out. So if you think your knees are pointing in arrows to the side of the child, and the feet can almost come in and touch each other. It's the earliest type of sitting and a normal type of sitting because it provides a large base of support that a child can actually develop the trunk support. However, when we're moving on to more advanced sitting, we do want to bring those legs in. So with Logan, he struggles to come out of loop sitting because his legs naturally fall out that way because they're very low tone. So we're using the Playpak to teach him that he can do long leg sitting and to make sure that his trunk is still developing that support regardless of whether he does independently straight leg sit or not. So then from that we can work on even more advanced sitting, which is side sitting. So we need side sitting to get ourselves up from the floor for lying to sitting. It's a really good transitional position because we'll go through side sitting when we get into kneeling, when we get into crawling, in all sorts of positions. So it's a really useful position. And even if we wouldn't independently learn it, even if we're never going to independently learn it, we can still practice it. We can still gain as many of those skills as possible. So here we've got the beads and mirror to the side. He loves himself, he loves the mirror. So we've got them over the side so that he is reaching over, and you can see that his right leg, so the one on the left of the picture, is starting to roll over to the middle. If he was sat by himself, his legs would always go into that looped sitting position, but his right leg there is starting to roll over because his trunk, his body is taking it that way because he's leaning over. So then that's developing that early side sitting, and what we would do there is maybe move the beads to one side, the mirror to the other, make sure that he's moving from left to right so that he's really working hard on all those trunk muscles, but twisting and leaning and moving in all sorts of different directions as opposed to simply just the forwards and backwards of the early sitting. The thing about this position as well, is that as we're learning to put our hands to the side, even though he's not going to fall there because the horseshoe is giving a really lovely support, he's learning that he can put his hands to the side. So if he were then to progress to more independent sitting, if he was to start to fall to the side, he would know to put his hands there. And that's a really hard skill to learn. Even in typical, and we don't really worry too much about reaching targets with children that are delayed in their development. We don't necessarily worry about when they reach their skills, because we work on the skills to get them there anyway. I hope that makes sense. But we wouldn't learn to put our hands to the side, even in really well-functioning children, until we're 8 months old. So that's a long way down the road. So if we can work on these skills early, then we're given our best chance to succeed. Oh, that's a hard sentence. Okay, next. So what we try to do is really plan forward with these things, and that's what I was alluding to a second ago. We try to plan forward. So loop sitting, although it's a natural way for baby to sit, and they might be able to independently sit on the floor in loop sitting, I would still then work on long leg sitting so that we can think about progressing onto side sitting. Because if we're in this big loop with our legs massively wide out, they're not going to be able to lean over to the side because the knee's in the way. The pelvis stops them from moving. So getting the legs straight in front of them frees up the pelvis for more lateral side-to-side movement. And if they've never learned to put their hands forward, how can they learn to sit? So the early sitting, where we're really encouraging them to put their hands on their knees, put their hands forward, reaching for toys forwards, that's essential to learning how to sit, because they've got to prop their own body up initially when they're not strong enough to hold when their trunk's not strong enough to hold it up. They use their hands, they use their shoulders to keep them there. So all these skills link with each other.
Nick, I'm going to interrupt you there, if that's okay, because I just have a question for you. So,
yeah.
I'll read this out, and you can tell us what you think. My son has very high tone and is very strong. He can sit unassisted for a brief period, but has the tendency to buck backwards. He holds his hands tight and doesn't put
Sorry, what was that? Sorry, what was that? You broke up a bit.
He holds his hands tight.
Okay.
And doesn't put his hands down. Are there things I can do to encourage him to bear weight in his arms and to not buck back?
Yep, so the bucking back is the high tone that we were talking about. It's really common and it's really hard to manage. I do feel for you. But is often, and it's not always so, this is something you can really speak to your therapist about. But what I would often do in that situation, because I deal with a lot of these children, is I would probably give extra support at the top and on the shoulders so that he feels really well supported and really controlled. You almost give him, so you say he can sit by himself, and that's excellent, and you would definitely work on that, but work on individual bits so that yes, you do the independent sitting at times, but then you also work with a lot more support than he actually needs, so that, for example, maybe you have 2 of the red horseshoes and 1 of the smaller ones right at the top, so that he's got his trunk fully supported by the red horseshoes, and then the green horseshoe at the top that pushes his shoulders forwards in that protracted position. And that would, because his shoulders are there, that would hopefully limit a little bit of his overextension, so his thrusting backwards. You can then help as well to take his hands forwards and play with his hands in front of him. And you say he fists his hands, so take his thumb out first, which will hopefully loosen up his fingers. So get your hand within his and take the base of his thumb out, so you're not pulling it from the top of the thumb, but from the base of the thumb, and that may help loosen out the fingers. And then just gently put them on the floor. Don't look for too much. So if one part of this isn't working, or if he's really not enjoying it, then it's not going to work, because he's just going to throw himself backwards. I'm pretty sure that if I know these children, if he's angry, he'll throw himself backwards even more. So just work on the little bits. See if he gets comfortable with that extra support. If you haven't actually got a Playpak, then sit him on your lap or in your lap and use your body and your shoulders to wrap around him so that he's really flexed. So go the opposite end of where he would where he throws himself. So if he throws himself backwards, really flex him up, get his arms forward, get those, really important to get those shoulders forwards. And if he leads the movement, so if the first thing to go backwards is his head, then give him that support on the top of his head to make sure he's looking down at something that he's interested in, and keep his interest in front of him and down low, so nice and close, almost between his legs, so that he's really looking down, and then really help him lots. So as I say, so work on the 2 bits, work on the independent sitting if you can, if that's what your therapist has advised you, but then also work on the more supportive, almost working on your upper limb stuff, so working on bringing those hands forward opposed to the sitting, if that makes sense. Has that answered the question?
I think so. It makes sense to me. So if there's anything else that you need to know on top of that, just you can let us know in the question panel. So Nick, we'll now move on to lying to sitting, to that transition.
Yeah.
So why is it important?
So we often work with children in very static positions. So, and I'm guilty of this, and I'm sure many therapists are, that we work on prone, so tummy time, we work on supine, we work on sitting, but we must not forget the transitions in between, because they are essential. And it's often that we'll often see children who may come to us late. They're really sort of splinter skills, so they're able to sit really well, but they have no idea how to get there from laying, and this leads to huge amounts of frustration. So we need to make sure that children can move in between them, and it's really complex, difficult movements that they've got to master very early on in life. Another important but also difficult thing is that we've got to make sure that we've worked on the early building blocks to do this. So if a child can sit independently, and they're good at sitting, they're placing their hands forward, then I might then go back and actually work on rolling and work on the early skills to develop their independent movement between positions. But the other thing as well is that you've got to make sure that they would actually have these building blocks to work on this. So although I'm going to go through a technique of lying to sitting here, you might want to check with your therapist whether your child is actually ready to do it, because if they're not going to be taking part in it and not going to be doing it, then they simply won't benefit. And if we're, as this other parent mentioned, if the child's throwing themselves backwards and hating it all, you're just going to be reinforcing bad habits. So yeah.
Okay.
So moving between positions, it needs to be repeated many times for children to get it. It's an inordinate amount of times actually before a movement or a pattern of movement is actually ingrained and properly learnt. For children with movement difficulties, for example cerebral palsy, it's really hard for a child to repeat a movement because their tone might get in their way, or their abnormal movement pattern might get in the way of them repeating it. So we've got to help them to do that. We've got to help them to repeat the movement so that they can actually learn it and have it ingrained as a good movement pattern as opposed to a bad movement pattern. So yeah, as we said before, it's important to learn the really early skills as well, the supine, the tummy, back lying, the prone, and side lying positions, and the transition between them. So the rolling, rolling is really important to learn if you want to lay to sit. And it's also important to recognise that a movement between positions, it involves lots and lots of different movements. So it's twisting, bending, straightening, putting weight through different parts of the body. And if the child doesn't know those areas of the body, if they've never spent their time on their side, in side lying, they won't know what their side is. Or if they're very bent and then straight, they might not know rotation, they might not know twisting movements. So we've got to try and help them learn them as best as we can. And I would still practice these if a child is not necessarily able to do this by themselves. I would still try and teach as many of the skills as possible, so that as they grow and as they get older, it might help with them walking or might help with them standing later on. So yeah. Oh, I need a drink. I'm going all croaky. So the starting for laying to sitting is, I love that smile. If we start with the child laid on their back and you hold their arm, you would lead the arm so that you're taking them into a side lying position. So Logan has actually started to lift his body up there because he was pulling so hard on my arm. But you would start low down and you'd slowly lift them up so that they have got weight, and you can see that his right elbow, the one on the floor, is slightly bent, so he's taking some weight through that elbow. But whilst I'm doing this, you've got to make sure that they are taking part in the movement. So I think we say later on that he would brace his shoulder. So you almost see the muscles tighten in the shoulder. You see him tuck his chin towards his chest, and he's really then taking part in the activity. So, and you're not just going to yank him up into sitting. So you lead him into sideline and then gently off so that his elbow is putting some weight through the floor. Next.
What if you find, Nick, that they're not putting a massive amount of weight through their elbow, and you feel like you're maybe pulling a little bit more than...
If you're pulling too much,
Yeah.
well, it's important that at least the top shoulder is braced, so there's some activity going on there, so that you're not, going to do any damage to ligaments and what have you. But if they're really not going, then I would take this back to roll, so going from laying on their back to the side, and then I would probably put my other arm underneath the trunk and start to ease it up, and I would break it down into smaller bits and give more support. It's a bit hard to explain that through pictures, and it would probably be better if people would then, if the child's not taking part at all, or if they're doing some really abnormal movement patterns, so throwing themselves backwards or really flexing up their legs, which we see, or if their head's completely flopping down, then I would sort of say, I'd ask your therapist to go over it in person, because it's much easier with proper visual aids as opposed to just pictures.
Okay.
But yeah, you can. If the child isn't taking part as much, it's not to say that we wouldn't do it. It's just to say we would give more help in a more complex way.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, as we're saying, you'll be able to tell if they're taking part, because their shoulder would brace and they would really start to pull against you. And early on, early on, their bottom arm almost just falls into that position with the elbow bent, and they only put a really, really small amount of weight through. But as long as they're taking part, as long as they're pulling a little bit with that top arm, then I would give them still quite a lot of help. And you can see by Logan's head position here that he knows the direction he's going, because his head is slightly tilted to the left. So he's almost starting to correct his head position. So that's sort of another way of telling whether they're taking part, because they move their head with the movement. But yeah, as I said, they should be able to hold their head up. If they can't hold their head up, then no, I wouldn't necessarily do this this way. I'll do it a different way. But as they do more and more themselves, you would reduce the support you give. You might, for example, where he's got to this level here, you might take the hand away, or and then make them do the rest of the movement. Or if they can't, because this is the harder end of the movement, because it's more upright, you might lay them on their back, encourage them to reach across their body so that they're coming to you to grab your hand, as opposed to you just simply taking it from the floor, and then they're starting movement by rolling slightly onto their side, and you can then help them the rest of the way. Yeah. So he just needed that little bit of help here to then straighten up. He was a little bit wonky, falling over, so I just gave my left hand to his right so that he could then straighten himself up. But they should be then putting weight through their pelvis nicely, but they would still be unsteady because there's no support here. But you can try as you can to take your hand away from theirs. You could also take your hands between their legs so that it's then taking them forwards and propping through their own hands so they're a little bit more stable. There are other ways to teach children from laying to sitting. This is not the only way. That kids learn to move in various different weird and wonderful ways. The important thing is that this is a typical movement pattern as opposed to an abnormal or a destructive movement pattern, and that's what we want to avoid. So I'm not saying that this is the way that you must or should teach your child to lay to sit, and it should definitely be something that is guided by your therapist, but it is just highlighting that we really do aim for normal or typical movement patterns as opposed to destructive ones. So hopefully we've taught great movement patterns earlier on in the laying positions. We've taught rolling, and that then leads more onto this, and we've hopefully avoided cheating or destructive movement patterns. And as I said before, if the early building blocks are set well, the later building blocks will fall much more easily into place. Excellent. And so yeah, so the forward thinking of laying to sitting, how can we master complicated positions if we can't master the individual transitional positions? So basically how can we get from laying to sitting if we don't know how to roll? Some kids just go straight over the splits, but that's one way. How can we move from laying to sitting if we've never put weight through our arms before? So yeah, so if we've not mastered the early sitting of putting weight forward through our arms, and if we've never been laid on our tummy, pushed up through our hands, then it's really hard to learn how to get from laying to sitting in this way, because we've not put weight through our hands, and that's half of the movement has an elbow or an arm down.
It is just the building blocks, isn't it?
Exactly. Everything links together, and it's a case of giving support when it's needed, and taking it away as soon as you can, and trying as best as we can to maintain typical movement patterns.
And so I guess once you start feeling like there's progress being made, it's kind of what can we remove here to make this a little bit more challenging, to kind of make this work a little bit harder.
And physios are cruel, because we're constantly in the goalposts. We only allow a child to succeed a couple of times before we make it harder.
Okay, we have a question here, Nick. How often should we be repeating this movement? So I'm assuming that's referring to this one, perhaps? The
laying to sitting. So it should be part of the sort of play. So if you're on the floor with your child and you're doing some play with them laid down, when you come to do sitting, practice with them getting up. Then if they get bored with sitting, lower them down in a similar way, just in reverse, and then come back up. And you can make it a game. It's hard to set a particular time or a particular amount, because children at this age tend to lose their patience with us. So we need to do it little and often is one thing that we'll say.
As well.
Sorry, what was that?
And when they're sort of in good form and not tired and
not too grotty and not teething and things. It's quite hard to fit it all in, really, but it should be all the activities that we try and give. And the good thing about Playpak is it's so useful to use in play. And so you play with your child a lot, and if you can put these in place during those times, as opposed to, it's our half hour of physio now, it works much better that way, and the child doesn't think of it as, I'm doing my exercise, or I'm bored of doing this, I want to stop. It's more of a, woohoo, I'm going up now. Oh, I'm falling back down. Yay, I'm going back up. So, repeat it lots, but at different times during the day.
And integrate it as much as possible into
play. Yeah.
Okay. How about, should we teach sitting only after the baby has learned to roll? So does rolling need to come first?
No, not at all. It's just, so we would do the early positions obviously first, but I would start sitting quite early on, because you sit with your baby in your lap, you sit with them sat in your arms. So those are the early sort of sitting postures that you would do without necessarily using the Playpak. You're using your body. So no, do not only start sitting once they're rolling. It's just rolling helps a lot with the more advanced transitions, because we have children, or I treat children that are up and walking that still really, really struggle to roll. It's just a case that we want to try and learn as much as possible. So you can go backwards and rework on the floor stuff and the rolling and things like that, and then move forwards again and work on the sitting. But and I'll still do that with teens that struggle to roll. I'll make them roll. But no, you definitely not only start in a very linear way. When it comes to child development, I try not to think in a real straight line of this first, then this, then this, then this, because everything happens in all sorts of different orders. Even with typical children, everything develops in a very sort of non-linear way.
Yeah.
Think of it more as a bar graph as opposed to a line.
Yeah. Okay, and I think that's all. If anybody wants to get a wee question in, we're about to finish up. And as I say, if you think of something after this, or if you're listening to the recording or watching the recording and have a question, just get in touch with us. You can email me. My name's claire.greer@fireflyfriends.com. But you should see, if you've registered, you'll see my email address pop up in your reminder emails and things. So Again, just a reminder that you can read Nick's blog posts. There are 3 different parts to it, and it covers all of what we're going to cover in this webinar series as well. On the community section of fireflyfriends.com, and there's lots of other fun stuff in there too. And you can also listen back to part 1 in the education section on the therapist section of fireflyfriends.com. And if you need a link for that, again, just email me and I will send it to you. As well as that then, Nick, we're planning on part 3 for the 4th of May. That's Wednesday, the 4th of May at the same time. So have a look out for it. We'll be sending out a couple of emails through the Firefly email address. So just have a wee look out for those, and it will contain a link that will allow you to register for part 3. And then that'll conclude our webinar series for the things you need to know about Playpak. So Nick, there's just one last slide there before we sign off.
No, I wasn't ready for that.
You were right, actually.
So, using Playpak, we've practiced transitions in early advanced sitting postures, which can help a child learn to move and become more active when seated. Yeah, so it's just leading through what I said, in that we do work on all sorts of skills, starting with laying and then progressing our way up to sitting. But yeah, we work on them all at the same time, and we progress.
Sort of covered all of that, and additional resources. Then you can find out all kinds of information on Playpak, fireflyfriends.com/Playpak. There are also videos there. There are fact sheets, frequently asked questions, and Nick's blog posts, which we've already discussed. So I don't see any other questions there. This is Nick and myself. And we'll say bye-bye for now, and hopefully we'll see you at the next webinar on the 4th of May. If you have any questions, just get in touch. And it's bye-bye for now.
And bye-bye from me. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.